How does it feel to be broke, Charlie? Those words cut through Thanksgiving dinner like a blade. My son-in-law, Ryan Phillips, was laughing, wine glass raised, savoring what he thought was my humiliation. I'm Charlie Anderson, 61, founder of a tech company most people have never heard of. Ryan Phillips, 34, my daughter's husband for 3 years, investment banker at Sterling Capital Management. He drives a $95,000 BMW, rents a house he pretends to own, and measures everyone's worth by their bank statements. For 3 years, he'd watched me clip coupons, drive my old Honda, wear thrift store clothes. He'd decided I was broke. That evening, Ryan had invited his Sterling Capital colleagues to witness his domestic triumph. Thanksgiving at his impressive rental home surrounded by success with his struggling father-in-law is a perfect example of what happens when you don't understand modern wealth creation. Charlie worked in tech back in the day, Ryan had explained earlier, his tone dripping sympathy. Before the real money moved into the space, companies like his got left behind. He had no idea he was sitting across from someone worth $868 million. I stayed calm, set down my fork, and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is simply watching the truth unfold. This is the story of how one Thanksgiving dinner destroyed everything my family thought they knew about success, wealth, and the deadly consequences of judging books by their covers. What happened when that Wall Street Journal notification lit up? My phone would leave Ryan speechless, humiliate him in front of his colleagues, and teach everyone at that table a lesson about respect they'll never forget. Let me take you back to where this all started. 3 years ago, when Ryan first joined our family by marrying my daughter, Jennifer, I thought I'd gained a son. Instead, I gained a critic who never missed a chance to remind me of my place in his hierarchy. Ryan worked at Sterling Capital Management, pulling down what he claimed was a mid-six-figure salary. He drove a leased 2024 BMW X5 that stickered at $95,000. Every family gathering became an opportunity for him to showcase his lifestyle while subtly degrading mine. Still shopping at Costco, Charlie? He'd say, eyeing my bulk purchases. You know, they have payment plans at real grocery stores now. When I'd arrive in my 2018 Honda Civic with its cloth seats and 85,000 miles, Ryan would shake his head. Dad, when are you going to upgrade? Jennifer's embarrassed to be seen in that thing. The truth was I could afford any car on the planet. But I'd learned long ago that real wealth whispers while insecurity shouts. My 1995 ranch house had original hardwood floors and a dated kitchen, but it was paid off. My clothes came from discount stores, but they were clean and comfortable. I shopped with coupons and drove a reliable car because those habits had helped me build something Ryan couldn't imagine. But Ryan saw only the surface. To him, I was a failed tech worker living on government handouts. He'd never bothered to ask about my background. Never showed curiosity about what CodeBridge systems actually did. Never wondered why I seemed so relaxed about money despite my modest spending. The pattern escalated over time. At Jennifer's birthday last year, Ryan announced he was upgrading their lifestyle. We're moving to Westlake Hills, he proclaimed, showing photos of a house listed at $1.3 million. Some of us believe in living up to our potential. His eyes found mine across the room. Of course, not everyone understands the value of making an impression. My wife, Linda, squeezed my hand under the table. She knew what I was worth, knew what I'd built, knew how hard it was for me to bite my tongue. But I'd always believed in letting actions speak louder than words. The worst part wasn't Ryan's condescension toward me. It was watching how it affected Jennifer. My daughter, who used to call me her hero, started avoiding one-on-one time. When I'd offered to help with expenses, she declined quickly, as if accepting money from her broke father would somehow embarrass her new husband. Dad, Ryan says we need to stand on our own feet, she'd explain. He thinks it builds character. Character from someone who leased his identity and rented his status. The breaking point came last month when Ryan suggested I consider moving to a more appropriate housing situation. There are some nice senior communities outside the city, he said during Sunday dinner. Subsidized rent, group activities, might be good for you to be around people in similar situations. Similar situations. He actually believed I was barely scraping by. Linda nearly choked on her wine. Jennifer looked mortified but didn't defend me. And I realized that my patience had enabled something ugly to grow in our family dynamic. That's when I decided that Thanksgiving 2024 would be different. But I had no idea just how different it would become. Ryan had pushed me into a corner for 3 years, using my daughter as leverage and my humble lifestyle as ammunition. He'd mistaken my restraint for weakness and my values for poverty. He was about to learn the difference. The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving felt like watching a storm build on the horizon. Ryan's confidence had reached dangerous levels, and I could see how it was poisoning my relationship with Jennifer. Dad, maybe you should consider what Ryan said about downsizing, Jennifer mentioned during a rare phone call in early November. I worry about you rattling around in that big house alone. Big house? It was 1,200 square feet. The mortgage must be killing you, she continued. Ryan calculated that even with Social Security, you're probably spending 60% of your income on housing costs. Ryan had calculated. My investment banker son-in-law had run numbers on my finances based on pure assumption. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Jen, I'm doing fine, I said gently. The house is paid off. Dad, you don't have to pretend with me. Ryan showed me some articles about older Americans struggling with debt. There's no shame in accepting help. Help from a man who was leveraged to his eyeballs, pretending to own assets he was barely qualified to lease. But the real wake-up call came when Jennifer suggested I shouldn't host Thanksgiving this year. Ryan's house has more space, she explained. And honestly, Dad, your place is looking a little tired. Ryan's colleagues might be there, and you know how appearances matter in his business. For 35 years, our family had gathered in my home for Thanksgiving. Linda and I had hosted Jennifer's birthdays, graduations, celebrations. Now, my own daughter was diplomatically telling me I wasn't good enough for her husband's professional circle. That evening, Linda found me in my home office staring at financial statements that told a very different story than the one my family believed. Are you going to tell them? She asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. I looked at the documents Patricia Stone had delivered earlier that week. CodeBridge's Q3 reports showed revenue growth of 43%. Amazon's acquisition team had been circling for months, and the preliminary numbers were staggering. Not yet, I said. But I think Thanksgiving might be the right time. Linda raised an eyebrow. All of them at once? Ryan's invited his colleagues, right? Wants to show off his new lifestyle, his successful family. Maybe it's time he learned what success actually looks like. The stakes weren't just about respect anymore. If I continued letting Ryan control the narrative, I'd lose my daughter entirely. She was already pulling away, embarrassed by her struggling father. How long before she stopped calling altogether? Worse, I could see Ryan's influence spreading. Jennifer had started apologizing for my clothes when we met for lunch. She'd insist on paying for meals, convinced I couldn't afford them. Last month, she'd tried to slip $200 into my coat pocket when she thought I wasn't looking. My own daughter was trying to give me charity money. The psychological damage was becoming permanent. Every interaction was filtered through Ryan's lens of my supposed poverty. Every conversation carried the weight of assumed financial stress. Jennifer had started treating me like a burden she needed to manage rather than a father she could depend on. And Ryan, he'd grown bolder with each perceived victory. His comments had evolved from subtle digs to outright mockery. Last week he had actually laughed when I mentioned considering a vacation. Vacation? Charlie, you can barely afford groceries. He'd said this in front of Jennifer, who nodded sympathetically instead of defending me. 3 years of this poison had nearly destroyed my relationship with my daughter. But it had also given me something valuable, perfect clarity about who Ryan Phillips really was beneath his polished exterior. Thanksgiving was 5 days away. Ryan was planning to use the dinner to showcase his success story, his beautiful wife, his impressive home acquisition. He'd invited colleagues to witness his rise in the world. He had no idea he was about to become the main course. Thanksgiving morning arrived with that crisp Austin air that makes you grateful to live in Texas. I'd agreed to have dinner at Ryan's place, partly because Linda thought it would be nice for Jennifer to host, and partly because I was curious to see how far Ryan would push his performance. The house in Westlake Hills was everything Ryan had promised, impressive from the street, perfectly staged, the kind of place that screamed expensive. As Linda and I pulled up in my Honda, I could already see Ryan positioning himself by the front window, no doubt timing his greeting to maximize the contrast between his BMW in the driveway and my modest vehicle. Charlie, Linda. Ryan bounded out, wearing a sweater that probably cost more than most people's monthly car payments. Welcome to our humble home. Humble, right? The interior tour was vintage Ryan. Each room came with a price point casually mentioned. These Italian marble countertops ran about $15,000. Jennifer insisted on the upgrade. The living room featured genuine hardwood floors, not that laminate stuff. And the kitchen boasted commercial-grade appliances like you'd find in a real restaurant. Jennifer glowed with pride as Ryan guided us through their showcase. She'd bought into his vision completely, and watching her happiness made my chest tight. Part of me wondered if I should just let this slide. Let Ryan have his moment. Then he opened his mouth about my contribution to dinner. What did you bring, Charlie? Ryan peered into the H-E-B grocery bag Linda carried. Please tell me you didn't shop the discount rack again. Green bean casserole, Linda said evenly. Charlie's grandmother's recipe. Ryan examined the ingredients like a health inspector: store-brand cream of mushroom soup, generic French fried onions. He shook his head with exaggerated sadness. Dad, there are food banks in Austin. No shame in getting help when you need it. Food banks. In front of Jennifer and 3 of his Sterling Capital colleagues who'd arrived early. Jennifer's face flushed. Ryan, it's fine, sweetheart. Your father's pride is admirable, but pride doesn't pay bills. Ryan's tone carried that patronizing warmth he'd perfected. Charlie, have you looked into senior assistance programs? There are benefits you probably qualify for. I'm doing fine, I said quietly. Of course you are. Ryan's smile never wavered. But fine is relative, isn't it? I mean, when's the last time you took a real vacation? Bought new clothes? Went to a restaurant that doesn't have paper napkins? His colleagues watched this exchange with the uncomfortable fascination people show when witnessing a car accident. Jennifer stared at her hands. Linda's jaw tightened. Money isn't everything, I replied. Spoken like someone who doesn't have any. Ryan laughed, and his colleagues joined in nervously. Look, Charlie, I respect the working class mentality. I really do. But at some point, you have to accept reality. What reality is that? That some people are builders and some people are maintenance. Ryan gestured around his rented showcase. I've generated more wealth in the last 3 years than most people see in a lifetime. It's not personal. It's just economics. The room went quiet. Even his colleagues looked uncomfortable with how far he'd pushed it. Economics. I repeated. Supply and demand, value creation, risk management. Ryan was warming up now, feeding off what he mistook for my discomfort. Your generation was great at following instructions. Charlie, my generation creates the instructions. He was performing now, showing off for his audience. Every word calculated to demonstrate his superiority over the old man who couldn't even afford decent groceries. Ryan, Jennifer said softly. Maybe we should, it's okay, honey. Your dad and I understand each other. Ryan's confidence was absolutely bulletproof. Charlie knows I'm not trying to hurt his feelings. I'm just being honest about where we all stand. Where we stand, as if life were a corporate hierarchy with him at the top and me somewhere near the bottom. You're right about one thing, I said, setting down my water glass with deliberate care. It is about where we stand. Something in my tone made Ryan pause. For just a moment, his perpetual smirk flickered. What do you mean? I mean you should be careful about assumptions, son. They have a way of coming back to bite you. Ryan's laugh returned, but it sounded forced now. Are you threatening me, Charlie? I'm educating you about economics. The silence stretched long enough for everyone to feel the shift in temperature. Ryan's colleagues exchanged glances. Jennifer looked between her husband and her father with growing unease. Ryan recovered first, his smile sliding back into place like armor. Well, this should be interesting. What's the old man going to teach the investment banker about money? What indeed? But that lesson would have to wait because my phone was ringing and the caller ID showed a name that would change everything. Kevin Walsh, Amazon, right on schedule. I glanced at my phone screen and felt that familiar flutter of anticipation. Kevin Walsh, my former CTO and current Amazon VP of Acquisitions. We'd scheduled this call for 3:30, but Ryan didn't know that. I should take this, I said, standing. Business call? Ryan snorted. Business? Charlie, what business could you possibly have on Thanksgiving? The kind that doesn't take holidays, I replied, walking toward the patio. Through the glass door, I could see Ryan holding court with his colleagues, no doubt explaining my delusions of relevance. Jennifer was setting the table with Linda, stealing worried glances in my direction. Kevin, I answered, stepping outside. Charlie, happy Thanksgiving, you old hermit. How's retirement treating you? About as quietly as I'd hoped. What's the word from Seattle? Well, your timing was perfect as always. Legal cleared the final hurdles yesterday. We're announcing Monday morning, but I wanted to give you a heads up. The number came in at $3.1 billion, $3.1 billion. Even though I'd expected it, hearing the figure out loud sent electricity down my spine. Your 28% stake makes you, Kevin paused for dramatic effect. Let me see here, $868 million richer as of Monday morning. Through the window, I watched Ryan gesturing grandly to his captive audience, probably explaining why my generation couldn't adapt to modern business realities. Charlie, you still there? I'm here. Just processing. Listen, I know you wanted to keep things low-key, but this is going to be huge news. Wall Street Journal is running the story Monday. TechCrunch has been sniffing around. You're about to become very unretired. I watched Ryan's performance through the glass. He was in his element, the successful investment banker educating lesser minds about wealth creation and market dynamics. Any regrets? Kevin asked about selling the majority stake 3 years ago. None. You needed operational control to scale properly. I wanted to step back and let smarter people do the heavy lifting. Smartest business decision either of us ever made. Amazon's been chasing us for 18 months. The automated logistics patents alone were worth the purchase price. Automated logistics patents, the technology Ryan had dismissed as outdated manufacturing stuff when Jennifer mentioned my background at last year's Christmas dinner. Kevin, I have to ask you something. My family, they don't know about any of this. Seriously? They think you're actually retired? They think I'm broke. Kevin's laughter carried across the line. Charlie Anderson broke. That's the funniest thing I've heard all year. You've been pulling down consulting fees that would make most CEOs jealous. I haven't been advertising it. Well, you won't be able to hide much longer. CNN wants an interview. Forbes is working on a profile. Something about America's most humble billionaire. Billionaire. The word still felt surreal. Charlie, can I ask why the secrecy? Most people would be shouting this from rooftops. Through the window, Ryan was now demonstrating something with his hands, probably explaining market cap calculations to my wife and daughter, the same man who'd suggested I look into food assistance programs. Let's just say I wanted to see who people really were before money changed the equation. And what did you learn? I watched Ryan pat Jennifer on the shoulder condescendingly as she asked a question about his work. Watched him dismiss her curiosity with the same casual arrogance he showed everyone he considered beneath him. More than I wanted to. Well, your learning period is about to end. Monday morning changes everything. Kevin, do me a favor. Don't mention this call to anyone at Amazon until after the official announcement. Of course. But Charlie, enjoy this moment. You've earned it. As I ended the call, Ryan slid open the patio door with theatrical concern. Everything okay out there, Charlie? You looked pretty serious for someone with no business to discuss. Just an old colleague checking in. Colleague? Ryan's eyebrows rose. From your tech days? Still talking shop with the guys from the unemployment line. His colleagues found this hilarious. Even Jennifer smiled uncomfortably. Something like that, I said. Well, maybe he can give you some job hunting tips. Austin's tech scene is booming. I bet there are companies that would hire someone with your experience. Entry level, of course, but it's never too late to start over. Start over? As if I hadn't spent the last 26 years building something that would soon be household knowledge. Actually, Ryan, I think my current situation is pretty sustainable. Sustainable? He tasted the word like wine. Is that what we're calling poverty now? Sustainable minimalism. I call it being comfortable with who I am. Comfortable? Ryan nodded sagely. That's important. Accepting your limitations, knowing your place. It's very zen. My place, if he only knew. But he was about to find out because Patricia Stone had just pulled into the driveway and she wasn't here for the turkey. Dinner was a masterpiece of psychological warfare disguised as family hospitality. Ryan had orchestrated the seating to maximize his advantage, himself at the head of the table, Jennifer to his right in the position of honor, his 3 sterling capital colleagues strategically placed to witness his domestic triumph. Linda and I were relegated to what Ryan probably considered the kids' table end, close enough to hear everything but positioned as supporting cast in his production. Before we eat, Ryan announced, raising his wine glass, I want to propose a toast. The 12 family members and colleagues gave him their attention. Jennifer beamed with pride. Ryan's moment had arrived. 3 years ago, I married into this family and I made a promise to Jennifer that I would provide the lifestyle she deserved. Tonight, in our new home, surrounded by success, I think we can all agree that promise has been kept. Polite applause. Jennifer actually glowed. But more importantly, Ryan continued, his gaze finding mine across the table, I want to thank everyone here for teaching me valuable lessons about different approaches to life. Some people chase money. Some people save every penny. And some people, his pause was perfectly timed, some people learn to be happy with less. The meaning landed exactly as intended. His colleagues nodded approvingly. Ryan was a man who understood hierarchy, who could gracefully acknowledge family members of different economic classes without being condescending. Except it was completely condescending. To family, he concluded, in all its forms. We clinked glasses and began eating. For 20 minutes, conversation flowed around safe topics, the weather, football, holiday plans. Ryan masterfully guided discussions to showcase his expertise while steering clear of anything that might elevate other voices. Then he opened the door I'd been waiting for. Charlie, I've been thinking about our conversation earlier, about economics and knowing your place. Ryan carved his turkey with surgical precision. I wonder if you'd be interested in hearing how wealth actually gets built in the modern economy. I'm always open to learning, I said. See, this is what I respect about your generation. Humility, the willingness to listen to people who've actually succeeded in complex markets. His colleague from Sterling Capital, a younger man named Brad, leaned forward with interest. You're in finance too, Mr. Anderson? Not exactly, Ryan answered before I could respond. Charlie worked in tech back in the day, before the real money moved into the space. What kind of tech? Brad asked politely. Ryan waved dismissively. Oh, you know, grunt work, implementation stuff, before artificial intelligence and automated systems made most of that obsolete. Automated systems. He just dismissed the very technology that was about to make me 9 figures richer. The thing about Charlie's generation, Ryan continued, warming to his theme, is they understood process, but not strategy. They could build things, sure, but they never grasped the bigger picture of value creation. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. Even she could sense Ryan was pushing too hard. Take Charlie's old company. What was it called, Dad? Code something. Codebridge Systems, I said quietly. Right. Codebridge. Classic example of old-school thinking. They probably built solid products, hired good people, focused on customer service, all very admirable. Ryan's tone suggested it was anything but. But when the market shifted toward scalability and strategic partnerships, companies like that got left behind. What happened to the company? Asked Sarah, another Sterling Capital associate. Ryan looked directly at me with mock sympathy. Failed, obviously. Otherwise Charlie wouldn't be clipping coupons and shopping at thrift stores. No offense, of course. None taken, I said. The brutal truth about business, Ryan continued, is that good intentions don't pay bills. You can work hard your entire life, build something solid and honest, and still end up broke because you didn't understand how modern markets actually function. The table was silent except for the clink of silverware. Everyone could feel the cruelty in Ryan's monologue, but no one knew how to stop it. Take real estate as an example, Ryan gestured around his rented showcase. Some people save for 30 years to buy a modest home and think they've achieved success, but smart money leverages assets to acquire appreciating properties that generate passive income streams. He was describing exactly what I'd been doing for the last 15 years, but from his perspective I was the cautionary tale of financial ignorance. I feel bad for people like Charlie, Ryan continued. They did everything they thought was right. Worked hard, saved money, built businesses based on outdated models, but they never understood that in the modern economy, you have to think bigger. Ryan, Jennifer said softly. Maybe we should, it's okay, honey. Your dad knows I'm trying to help. Ryan's smile was pure poison. Charlie, I've been thinking about your situation, and I have an idea that might interest you. Here it comes, I thought. Sterling Capital has a program for older investors with limited assets, very conservative portfolios, minimal fees, designed for people who can't afford to take risks. Ryan leaned forward like he was offering charity. I could probably get you started with as little as $5,000 to build a small nest egg over time, $5,000. He was offering to help me invest $5,000. That's very generous, I said. It's the least I can do for family. I mean, watching someone struggle at your age, it breaks my heart. Ryan's voice carried just the right note of compassionate concern. How does it feel, Charlie, being this broke at 61, knowing you'll probably never recover financially? The silence was absolute. Even the Sterling Capital people looked mortified. How does it feel to be broke? Ryan repeated, his smile never wavering. That's when my phone buzzed with a news alert from the Wall Street Journal. Perfect timing. I glanced at my phone screen and felt the universe align. The Wall Street Journal notification read, breaking, Amazon acquires Codebridge Systems for $3.1 billion in strategic logistics play. The irony was so perfect I almost laughed. Sorry, I said, holding up the phone. Important news alert. Ryan's eyes rolled. Charlie, we're having Thanksgiving dinner. Whatever conspiracy theory newsletter you subscribe to can wait. It's the Wall Street Journal, I said mildly. Oh, the Wall Street Journal. Very impressive. Ryan's sarcasm was thick as honey. Let me guess, another article about how the economy is rigged against the working class. I read the headline aloud, Amazon acquires Codebridge Systems for $3.1 billion in strategic logistics play. The table went silent. Ryan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Codebridge, Brad said slowly. Isn't that the company you mentioned, Mr. Anderson? The same one, I confirmed. Ryan's laugh was sharp and nervous. Come on, Charlie. Coincidences like that don't happen. There must be dozens of companies with similar names. I opened the article and began reading. Amazon announced today its acquisition of Austin-based CodeBridge Systems, a leader in automated logistics and supply chain optimization. The $3.1 billion deal represents Amazon's largest acquisition in the logistics space. Charlie, Linda said softly, maybe you should. The company was founded in 1998 by Charles Anderson, who retained a significant equity stake after selling operational control to current CEO Kevin Walsh in 2021. Ryan's face had gone pale, but he was still fighting. There are probably multiple Charles Andersons in tech. It's a common name. I continued reading. Anderson, 61, who has maintained a deliberately low profile since stepping back from daily operations, stands to realize approximately $868 million from his 28% ownership stake. The only sound was the grandfather clock ticking in Ryan's living room. $868 million, Sarah whispered. Ryan was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. This is some kind of joke, Charlie. What are you trying to pull here? I'm not pulling anything, son. I'm just reading the news. My phone rang. Kevin Walsh again, right on cue. I should probably take this, I said, answering on speaker. Kevin. Charlie, did you see the journal article? They got the numbers exactly right. $868 million, buddy. How does it feel to be Amazon's newest billionaire? The phone might as well have been a bomb going off. Billionaire? Jennifer's voice was barely audible. Well, technically you were already worth about $600 million before today, Kevin continued cheerfully. But who's counting? Charlie, the phone hasn't stopped ringing. CNN, Forbes, Bloomberg, everyone wants to interview the humble genius who built America's most efficient logistics network. Ryan looked like he was having a stroke. Kevin, I'm at family dinner. Can we talk later? Of course. But Charlie, enjoy this moment. 26 years of work just paid off in a very big way. I ended the call and looked around the table. 12 sets of eyes stared back at me in complete shock. $600 million? Brad managed. You were already worth $600 million before today? Yes, I said quietly. Ryan's voice cracked. This can't be real. Charlie shops at Costco. He drives a Honda. He lives in that tiny house. I like Costco, I said. Good value, quality products. My Honda's reliable, and my house is perfect for 2 people. But Jennifer looked lost. Dad, why didn't you tell us? I was curious to see who you all really were when you thought I had nothing. The weight of that statement hit everyone differently. Jennifer turned red. Linda smiled proudly. Ryan's colleagues suddenly found their plates fascinating. But Ryan wasn't done fighting. This is impossible, he said, standing abruptly. Charlie, I work in finance. I know wealth. Wealthy people don't live like you've, maybe that's why they don't stay wealthy, I replied. You're telling me you've been worth hundreds of millions of dollars this entire time while I've been trying to help you. While I've been worried about your financial situation. No one asked you to worry. But I've been offering to help you invest. I suggested senior housing. I mentioned food banks. Ryan's voice was climbing toward hysteria. Why would you let me embarrass myself like that? I didn't let you do anything, Ryan. You chose to make assumptions about my life without ever asking a single question about my actual circumstances. You let me think you were broke. I never said I was broke. You decided I was broke because I don't waste money on things that don't matter to me. Sarah cleared her throat awkwardly. Ryan, maybe we should, no. Ryan spun toward his colleagues. Don't you see what happened here? He humiliated me. In front of you. This was planned. Actually, I said, checking my phone again, this wasn't planned at all. The Amazon deal closed yesterday. The announcement was scheduled for Monday. Kevin just wanted to give me a heads up. But you knew. You've known this whole time. I knew CodeBridge was valuable. Yes, I helped build it from nothing. But I didn't know Amazon would offer $3.1 billion. That's higher than anyone expected. Jennifer was crying now, quiet tears that spoke to 3 years of needless worry about her father's financial security. Ryan wasn't finished. This whole dinner was a setup. You played me. I came to Thanksgiving dinner, Ryan. You're the one who decided to give everyone a lecture about economics and wealth creation. I just sat here eating turkey. But you knew. While I was explaining how money works, you knew you were worth almost $1 billion. The absurdity of it was finally sinking in for everyone. Ryan had spent the entire evening teaching a billionaire about financial literacy. You asked how it felt to be broke, I said quietly. I thought you might want to know what it actually feels like to make assumptions about people you don't understand. Ryan sank back into his chair, the fight completely gone out of him. That's when Patricia Stone knocked on the front door, briefcase in hand, ready to deliver the acquisition documents that would make everything official. I should probably get that, I said, standing. That'll be my attorney. We have some paperwork to handle. Ryan just stared at his plate, finally understanding that his entire worldview had just been turned upside down by the man he'd spent 3 years patronizing. The quiet power approach had worked perfectly. Sometimes the best lessons are the ones that teach themselves. Patricia Stone stood at Ryan's front door wearing her signature confidence like expensive perfume. At 62, she'd handled more high-stakes acquisitions than most lawyers see in entire careers, and nothing about Amazon's biggest logistics deal had rattled her composure. "Charlie," she said, stepping inside with her leather briefcase. "I hope I'm not interrupting dinner, but these documents need your signature tonight." "Perfect timing, actually," I said. "Patricia, meet my family. Everyone, this is Patricia Stone, my attorney for the last 15 years. Patricia surveyed the shell-shocked faces around the dinner table with the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen every possible human reaction to sudden wealth. "I take it the news has already broken," she asked, noting Ryan's pale complexion and Jennifer's tear-streaked face. "Just now," I confirmed. Patricia set her briefcase on Ryan's expensive Italian marble countertop and opened it with practiced efficiency. "Well, then let's make this official. Charlie, Amazon's wire transfer will complete tomorrow morning, $868, $243, $612 to be precise." She said the number like it was a grocery list. Total closing deals were Tuesday afternoon paperwork. $868 million, Jennifer whispered as if saying it aloud might make it real. "Your father's been one of my most interesting clients," Patricia continued, laying documents across the counter. "Most people worth this kind of money can't help but spend it. Charlie's the only billionaire I know who still uses coupons." Ryan finally found his voice. "Billionaire?" "Oh, yes," Patricia said cheerfully. "Charlie's liquid assets alone were worth $600 million before today. Real estate holdings, municipal bonds, index funds. Very conservative portfolio. Very smart strategy." She pulled out a thick folder. "These are the acquisition documents. Page 47 has the equity breakdown. Charlie retained 28% when he sold operational control 3 years ago. Brilliant move, really." Ryan's colleague Brad leaned forward despite himself. "You sold majority control but kept significant equity?" "Kevin needed operational freedom to scale the business," I explained. "I wanted to step back and let smarter people handle growth strategy. Turned out to be the right call." "The right call?" Patricia laughed. "Charlie, you're the most understated man in Texas. Kevin built something extraordinary on your foundation. The automated logistics patents alone are worth more than most Fortune 500 companies." And she turned to address the table. "Your father invented technology that revolutionized supply chain management. Every package Amazon delivers, every automated warehouse, every predictive shipping algorithm, it all traces back to code Charlie wrote in his garage in 1998. The silence was profound. Ryan stared at his hands like they held answers to questions he'd forgotten how to ask. "Ryan," I said quietly, "you asked earlier how wealth gets built in the modern economy." He looked up with hollow eyes. "It gets built by solving real problems, by creating value that didn't exist before, by working with people smarter than yourself and learning from everyone around you." I paused, letting that sink in. It doesn't get built by leveraging other people's assets or explaining to strangers why their approach to money is wrong. Patricia was reviewing documents, but I could see her suppressing a smile. She'd witnessed plenty of family drama in her career, but this particular comeuppance was especially well-deserved. "Charlie," Patricia said, "there's one more thing. Amazon wants to offer you a consulting position, 2 days a month, $40,000 per day plus travel expenses. Kevin specifically requested you, $80,000 a month for part-time work, more than Ryan's annual salary at Sterling Capital." "I'll think about it," I said. Jennifer suddenly stood up, tears flowing freely now. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She wrapped her arms around me, and I felt 26 years of careful planning crystallize into this single moment. Not the money, not the vindication, but my daughter finally seeing her father clearly again. "There's nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. I believed him," she whispered. "I believed you needed help. I was embarrassed by you, and you never said a word. You were protecting your marriage. That's what good wives do." Over Jennifer's shoulder, I watched Ryan process the magnitude of his miscalculation. 3 years of condescension toward a man worth nearly $1 billion. 3 years of explaining economics to someone who'd revolutionized modern logistics. 3 years of offering charity to a person who could buy his entire company without checking his bank balance. Ryan, I said gently, separating from Jennifer. You mentioned earlier that some people are builders and some people are maintenance. He nodded numbly. You were right about that, but you got the assignments backward. Patricia finished organizing her documents. Charlie, I need your signature on pages 12, 31, and 62. Standard transfer protocols. As I signed the papers that officially made me Amazon's newest major shareholder, Ryan finally spoke. Charlie. His voice cracked. I don't understand. Why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you tell me who you really were? I handed the signed documents back to Patricia and looked at Ryan with something approaching sympathy. Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought you had all the power. The truth hung in the air like smoke from Patricia's briefcase. Ryan had revealed exactly who he was when he believed himself superior, cruel, condescending, quick to kick someone he thought was already down. Now everyone knew what he was made of, and what I was worth. The fallout began before Patricia had even packed her briefcase. Ryan's Sterling Capital colleagues were already calculating how this revelation would play at their office Monday morning. Brad and Sarah exchanged glances that spoke volumes about professional embarrassment and career implications. We should probably head out, Brad said tactfully, standing from the table. Thank you for dinner, Jennifer, and Mr. Anderson. He paused, clearly unsure how to address someone who'd just become one of Austin's wealthiest residents. Congratulations on your success. Charlie's fine, I said. It always has been. After his colleagues left, Ryan sat in his expensive chair like a man watching his life reorganize itself in real time. The power dynamic that had defined our relationship for 3 years had just inverted completely, and he was struggling to find his footing. Ryan, Jennifer said softly, maybe you should apologize to my father. Apologize? Ryan's laugh was bitter. Jen, I've been trying to help him for 3 years. I offered financial advice, investment opportunities, housing suggestions. I was looking out for family. You were being condescending, Jennifer replied, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. You were cruel, Ryan. Even if Dad had been struggling, the way you talked to him was wrong. And this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not the money reveal, not the professional humiliation, but my daughter recognizing the pattern of behavior she'd been enabling. I was being realistic, Ryan protested. Look at how he lives, Jen. The old car, the outdated house, the thrift store clothes. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to think he's my father and deserves basic respect regardless of his bank account. Linda squeezed my hand under the table. 3 years of watching her daughter distance herself from us was finally coming to an end. But Ryan wasn't finished defending himself. This is insane, Charlie. You deliberately misled everyone. You let me make assumptions. I let you reveal your character, I interrupted. That's very different. My character? Ryan's voice rose. I was trying to help. You were trying to feel superior. There's a difference. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin Walsh. Charlie, TechCrunch wants an interview tomorrow. Forbes is flying someone in from New York. CNN called 3 times. Your quiet retirement is officially over. The media attention would start Monday, which meant Ryan's humiliation was about to become very public. Austin's business community wasn't large. Word would spread quickly about the investment banker who'd spent Thanksgiving explaining money to a billionaire. Ryan, I said, showing him the text, you should probably prepare for some awkward conversations at work next week. His face went ashen. What do you mean? The story is going to be everywhere. Austin tech founder becomes billionaire overnight. There will be interviews, profiles, probably some social media buzz. I paused to let him absorb this. People talk in professional circles, especially about funny stories. Funny stories about investment bankers giving financial advice to people who don't need it. Ryan's career suddenly felt very fragile. Sterling Capital Management prided itself on sophisticated client assessment and market insight. Having one of their rising stars publicly embarrass himself with a billionaire wouldn't reflect well on the firm's judgment. Jennifer was watching this exchange with growing understanding. Dad, did you plan this? I planned to see how people treated me when they thought I was powerless. The Amazon deal was just fortunate timing. But you knew this would happen to Ryan. I knew Ryan would reveal who he really is if given enough rope. What happened to him after that was always his choice. The psychology was finally clear to everyone. For 3 years, I'd given Ryan every opportunity to show kindness, respect, or even basic courtesy to someone he believed was struggling. Instead, he'd chosen mockery, condescension, and cruelty. You set me up, Ryan said quietly. I gave you a choice, I corrected. Every time you decided to humiliate me, you could have chosen differently. Every time you explained my failures to your colleagues, you could have shown grace instead. Patricia snapped her briefcase shut and stood to leave. Charlie, I'll file these documents first thing Monday. The wire transfer should complete by 10 a.m. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. 26 years of the most interesting legal work of my career, she replied with a smile. Watching you build CodeBridge from incorporation to billion-dollar acquisition has been remarkable. She shook hands with Jennifer and Linda, then paused at Ryan. Mr. Phillips, I've seen a lot of family dynamics around sudden wealth. The families that survive are the ones built on respect rather than hierarchy. After Patricia left, the house felt oppressively quiet. Ryan's Thanksgiving showcase had become a crime scene of his own making. I need to call my parents, Jennifer said. They should hear this from me before they see it on the news. Good idea, I agreed. And Jen, take your time processing all this. It's a lot to absorb. She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs with her phone, leaving the three of us in uncomfortable silence. Ryan finally spoke. What happens now? That depends on you, I said. How? Well, you can spend your energy being angry that I didn't rescue you from your own behavior, or you can figure out why you felt the need to tear down someone you thought was vulnerable. Linda stood and began clearing dishes, a clear signal that her patience with Ryan's self-pity had reached its limit. Ryan, I continued, you're smart enough to understand what just happened here. The question is whether you're wise enough to learn from it. He stared at his hands, probably calculating the professional and social cost of his Thanksgiving performance. By Monday afternoon, everyone at Sterling Capital would know the story. By Wednesday, it would be Austin business community folklore, the son-in-law who taught a billionaire about money management. The investment banker who offered charity to someone worth more than his entire firm. The young hotshot who discovered that quiet confidence beats loud arrogance every single time. I think, Ryan said slowly, I need to figure out who I really am underneath all this. It was the first wise thing he'd said all evening. 3 months later, our family looked completely different. Not because of the money, although the financial security was profound, but because everyone finally understood where they stood. Jennifer and I had lunch every Tuesday now, just the two of us, rebuilding the relationship that Ryan's insecurities had damaged. She'd started asking real questions about CodeBridge, about the early days in my garage, about the technology that had quietly revolutionized logistics while she was growing up. I wish I'd paid attention back then, she said over coffee at our usual spot downtown. You tried to explain what you were building, and I thought it was just boring computer stuff. It was boring computer stuff, I replied. That's what made it valuable. The boring solutions are usually the ones that actually work. Ryan had been different since Thanksgiving. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by something approaching humility. He'd taken a leave of absence from Sterling Capital, partly because the story had indeed become Austin business folklore, and partly because he'd realized he needed to figure out who he was beyond his job title and salary. He's seeing a therapist. Jennifer mentioned, trying to understand why he needed to feel superior to everyone. How do you feel about that? Relieved. Honestly, the man I married 3 years ago wasn't the man who mocked you at Thanksgiving. Therapy is helping him find his way back. I'd actually grown to respect Ryan's response to his public humiliation. Instead of blaming others or making excuses, he'd taken responsibility for his behavior and started doing the hard work of personal change. It couldn't have been easy, watching his carefully constructed identity crumble in real time. The media attention had been intense but mercifully brief. Forbes ran a profile about America's stealth billionaire. CNN interviewed Kevin Walsh about the acquisition. TechCrunch wrote about quiet leadership in the startup world. The interview requests had tapered off after I declined most of them. Fame held no appeal for me. I'd spent 61 years learning that the best kind of power operates without an audience. But the Amazon consulting work had been fascinating, 2 days a month helping them optimize supply chain innovations, working with brilliant people who treated my experience as valuable rather than outdated. It reminded me why I'd fallen in love with technology in the first place. Dad, Jennifer said, can I ask you something? Always. Are you happy with how everything turned out? I considered this carefully. Happiness felt too simple a word for the complex satisfaction I felt. Justice might be closer, or maybe just clarity. I'm grateful, I said finally. Grateful that I got to see who people really were. Grateful that you found your way back to treating me like your father instead of a project to manage. Grateful that Ryan is doing the work to become someone worthy of you. And the money? The money is just money, Jen. It's security, opportunity, choices, but it's not happiness. That comes from knowing the people in your life respect you for who you are, not what you're worth. We sat in comfortable silence, watching Austin's downtown bustle through the cafe window. 3 years ago, Ryan would have insisted on paying for this coffee, making a show of his financial superiority. Now he was learning that strength didn't require performance. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda, dinner at 6 o'clock. Ryan's bringing flowers to apologize for last week's comment about your investment strategy. I showed Jennifer the text and she laughed. He's still giving you financial advice. Old habits die hard. But now he asks questions instead of making assumptions. That evening, Ryan did indeed arrive with flowers, not expensive ones, but thoughtful ones Linda would actually like. He'd been doing small things like this for months, gestures that acknowledged his need to rebuild trust with our family. Charlie, he said as we sat down to dinner, I've been thinking about something. What's that? You said I taught you about economics that Thanksgiving, that some people are builders and some people are maintenance. I remember. I think I've been maintenance my whole life. Moving money around, optimizing other people's investments, taking credit for market performance I didn't create. Ryan paused, choosing his words carefully. I want to learn how to actually build something. It was the question I'd been hoping he'd ask. Building requires patience, I said. It requires accepting that other people might be smarter than you. It requires failing quietly and learning constantly. Would you teach me? I looked at this man who'd spent 3 years tearing me down, who'd humiliated himself through his own arrogance, who was now humble enough to ask for help from someone he'd once pitied. Ryan, I said, I'd be honored to teach you about building things that last. Sometimes the best revenge is helping people become who they were meant to be all along. And remember, the quietest voices often have the most important things to say.